All yours.
Great, thanks, Jake. Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Chris. I work for the North Wales Wildlife Trust, and I'm the lead member of staff for the Nature Reserve team. So I've been with the trust for quite a while, and in my time with the trust, I've had lots of encounters with all sorts of wildlife, and I'll be talking about some of them that involve barn owl, and showing you some of the encounters with the barn owl that we've had online, which is all how we've been living a lot of our lives the last couple of years. So it just seems quite ironic that we're sharing some time with the barn owls via a video link. But also what I hope to sort of touch on for everyone really is how you can help barn owls, and I'll keep coming back to various things that people can do as I go through the talk. Just one thing as we do go through the talk, well, actually a couple of things. I'll be occasionally looking off to my left. That's because I'm using a dual screen, so don't be put off by that. It's just I'll be looking at the slightly larger images to my left on my second screen. But also we will be switching from the slides to video links. That might take a few seconds while we sort of juggle screens around, so do bear with us, and hopefully it will all go fairly smoothly and just help us enjoy the talk, the presentation even more. Great, okay. Right, okay, so this is really the sort of encounter with a barn owl that perhaps everyone is hoping for. So this sort of fantastic view of a barn owl flying at dusk over an area of sort of open grassland or a nature reserve. But it's not always what we can see, and often there's some very fleeting glimpses of a barn owl or any owls, and the video link that we've recently established is enabling us to see all sorts of behaviour and all sorts of things going on with the barn owl, but also quite importantly as well, it's really helping us in terms of being able to monitor how the barn owls are doing, how the chicks are doing, and how they're progressing through this breeding season. So I thought the first thing we do is just quickly drop into some live feed. But before we do that, I think it's rather rude not to be able to refer to these barn owls in person. And as I'm sure some of you will know, we've had a small competition in which we asked for people to suggest names for the birds. And we had over 150 entries. And we have chosen some, which I'll reveal in a moment. But I'd just like to thank everybody, and if anybody is listening to the talk who did suggest a name and you haven't won, just like to thank you for all the names that you suggested. It was really lovely to read all the names, and particularly to read all the little stories associated with why people had chosen the name. Sometimes it was to do with a pet, sometimes it was to do with a relation, an auntie, and it was just really lovely to read all these wonderful stories about the links that people were making with wildlife. So thank you all very much for taking the time to do that. But I can reveal that the names are Nos and Seren. So Nos is the male, and that's the bird you can see on the right hand side of the slide. And I'll talk a bit more later on about how we know that's the male. And at the moment in that picture, the female has her back to us, but hopefully later on we'll be able to see some videos of the bird properly. And the winner was Emma, and we have let her know, and she had a really lovely story about how important being able to be close up with owls had been important to her and helped her develop a real association with wildlife. So thank you, Emma, for sharing that story, and we will be sending you your prize fairly soon. So thank you very much for that. So there you go, it's Nos and Seren. Okay, so what I'd like to do now, just quickly, Jake, is to go over to the live feed just for a few seconds, so if you can see what's going on. So Jake, I shall have to stop sharing. I'll do that, and then over to Jake, and Jake will hopefully be able to share his screen and show you what's going on. And we'll have a few seconds just to see what the birds are up to. So you go to full screen, it might be a bit easier to see. So not a lot's going on, but the bird is there sleeping, and I think that is probably the female, and you can see that the speckling on the front of the bird there. So the females do have this sort of white, the dark spots on their chest, whereas the males do tend to be all white. One of the issues we have been having is this cobweb, but at the moment it's still getting you a bit of a view of the nest box. You can't quite see what's going on, and she is being fairly quiet at the moment. See the wind catching on the barn owl. She seems to be rather asleep. So okay, so Jake, if you could stop sharing your screen, and then I shall go back to sharing my screen. And we shall move on. Okay, so one of the things about owls is our encounters with owls, and people's encounters with owls have obviously been going on for millennia. And there's all sorts of ways that people have made this connection with owls. And there's a short extract from a poem by R.S. Thomas, which really sort of highlights perhaps the way that barn owls have had different names through the ages, a ghost owl, church owl, in particular. This extract from the poem by R.S. Thomas sort of really relates to that name of church owl. Its Latin name and scientific name is Tyto elba, and in Welsh, Ticlian wen, and both of those names really refer to the whiteness of the owl, and that sort of almost ghost-like appearance that it has, which is what makes it so fantastic when you do get to see one flying at dusk. But then the other association that people may have come across is in myth and legend, and within the Mabinogion there is a story of Blodeuwedd, who ends up being turned into an owl as punishment when she's unfaithful to her anointed lover, and she tries to cheat on him, ends up as an owl, but is also known as the goddess of flowers as well. Well, I suppose it is worth pointing out that other owls are available in Wales. The two perhaps you're most likely to see are on the left there, a tawny owl, most famous for its call of the male and female with the twit-to-woo, and then on the right hand side there, the little owl, which is actually an introduced species that has done remarkably well and spread right around the whole of Wales and the UK. The main thing we're here to talk about really is the barn owl, and this rather useful image is from the Barn Owl Trust website, and this is a really good website if you want lots of barn owl facts. And you can see there's all sorts of pointers here which are really helpful in identifying it, as I've been sort of saying already. If I can switch on a laser pointer, there you go. So you can see that this sort of speckling on the front of the owl here. This is common on the females, but obviously one of the really key things is the shape of the face on the barn owl, and how this helps its hearing and helps it to be able to detect its prey, along with its fantastic eyesight when it's flying at dusk and hunting at dusk. One of the other things that really helps it hunting and it being so silent is how soft and fluffy it is. And I must admit, the only time I've ever sort of picked up an owl is when I came across one that had been injured on the road. And it's amazing how they look so big, but then when you actually touch them, they are just made of almost entirely feathers, and they are so soft and expanded beyond their sort of apparent body size. The other thing to look at here, and what makes them such an efficient predator, is down at their feet, when they have these long toes and sharp talons to help them catch things in amongst the vegetation. But also they have this special comb on one of their talons to help them clean their facial disc, which means they can make sure that the tools they need for hunting are always very efficient and working extremely well. Sorry. Just trying to get rid of my laser pointer now, which won't seem to go away. That's better. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is to go and have a quick look at some of the videos that we've recorded over the last month and a half or so. So I'm just going to have to switch screens. So just bear with me for a moment. I'll just stop sharing that. And go here. And that one. Share it. And hopefully everyone can now see a clip of the two owls together. So this was taken a little bit early on in the year when the owls were in the nest box. This is before they had any eggs, and they were just sleeping mostly during the day, and then going out hunting. A couple of things to notice, really, and particularly down on the left-hand side here, these pellets. I'll come back to talk about those. So these are regurgitated by the owls and contain lots of the bits of the prey that they've been eating. And again, what you can see here is the male, the very white feathers at the front, but also a nice view of the facial disc there, which is so important to help them hunting. And it's great. One of the things that's really fascinating when you look at this is that as you look at it, you think there's perfectly still. It looks like an image or picture rather than a video. And then you notice them moving, like the male is there as it's breathing there, it's just moving around slightly, which is always amazing to watch. Okay, so I'll just stop sharing that, and then I shall go and back to my presentation. Okay. Right, so just before we move on, it's just worth thinking about how common barn owls are, and how very lucky we are to see one. So there's two little pictures here. Again, this is taken from the Barn Owl Survey website. So the one on the right-hand side shows a map of the whole of the UK, and you can see it looks like a sort of a fairly widespread distribution for the species, and lots of black dots, generally associated in the lowlands, but quite a lot of dots sort of in England. But then when you look at Wales, you can see on that one, it doesn't look like many. So when you do look at Wales, you see they are quite widely distributed and generally in the lowland areas. And across the whole of North Wales, there's probably only about 100 pairs or so that are breeding. So we are very lucky to see them around North Wales. And the numbers have fluctuated. They're particularly vulnerable to very harsh winters. So the winters we've had in the last couple of years, which haven't been too bad, will hopefully benefit them. More of the young will survive through the year and over winter, which is great. But also sort of more historically, one of the things that has affected them is the loss of their feeding habitat and the loss of their prey as semi-natural habitats have been destroyed. And alongside that, also the loss of old barns and buildings that they were able to nest in. So the Barn Owl Trust has done lots of fantastic work, and every year they produce, or almost every year, they produce this really interesting report, which you can find online, which is a sort of a collaboration of all these groups around the whole of the UK, and it updates sort of how the barn owls have done through the year, and it gives you a really good indication. As you can see just from there, that subtitle there, a poor year in most areas, and very bad in some. So that was in 2020. And one thing that really comes out of looking at this report, I found, is the role of volunteers in collecting this data. You know, lots of the people who are going out and recording barn owls and looking at checking the nests and maybe ringing the chicks and then collecting data on the birds later on are all volunteers. So there's an amazing amount of work that's being done by volunteers in helping us understand how barn owls are doing. So, as I said, one of the key issues for barn owls has been the loss of their nesting habitat. So lots of old buildings, whether it was an old cottage or even an old barns, have been renovated and restored, and not much thought given to the use of the building by barn owls beyond the restoration. Obviously, if it's a residential property, that's not particularly easy. But in old barns, it's always possible to think about what you can do for barn owls. And so you can see in this building here, this small hole has been left, allowing access for the owls into the inside, and then inside that they can either make use of the rafters and the beams within the building, or a nest box such as this one can be provided for them. And it's a nest box a bit like this that our owls are actually using. So if I just go back to that side. So the location where our owls are has had a nest box for about 10 years or so. And it's been successful most years, not every year from what we can tell. And it was only fairly recently that we've been able to install this video camera and have the web link. And that was thanks really to the funding from the Landfill Disposable Tax Community Scheme, which is administered by the WCVA, the Welsh Council for Voluntary Action. And that's enabled us to get this video and get this sort of fantastic insight into what the owls are doing. So what I'm going to do now is going to stop sharing again and just show you another bit of video, which was perhaps a very exciting video for us. So if I just got to move things around so I can see what's going on. Oh, there you go, there it is. So let's get the videos out of that. This one. So this short video was very exciting. So this, as you've just seen, it's only a short bit of video and it will play again. So this was on the 13th of April when we first realized that the owls had eggs. If I go back to the beginning, we can catch a glimpse of this. There you go. So that was the very first egg that was laid on the 13th of April. You can see the female there, sort of carefully sitting down on it. And again, you can see that there are still owl pellets all around the nest space. She's probably regurgitated. So while I'm here, what I think I will do is show you the next little video, save sort of jumping backwards and forwards. And that's this one. So this one was literally, I think it was about a week later, maybe 10 days later. And as you can see, there are 5 eggs there, which is slightly above average for a barn owl, but not the most they could have. They could have up to 8, I think, has been recorded. And so you see the female has been very careful. That's a lot of eggs to sit on and protect. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side, it looks like the male, sorry, is having something to eat. Let's go back to the beginning so we can see that. There you go. How careful she is sitting on those eggs, and then the male on the left-hand side pecking away at a vole, or perhaps I think that is. And we have seen them bringing food in that, and seen the female eating as well. Right, excuse me for a moment, I shall jump out of that and go back to the presentation. No. Oops. Hang on a minute. Excuse me, Doesn't seem to. Okay. Right. So hopefully everyone is now seeing a picture of a barn owl sort of hovering over some a reed bed, what it looks like. So these are the sort of habitats that barn owls prefer to hunt in. So it's fairly rough vegetation and long vegetation, which their prey, which tend to be small mammals mostly, can find shelter in and live in. So some of our nature reserve provide this sort of habitat in sort of abundance, but also elsewhere around our nature reserve. So you're looking at sort of places like this where you've got lots of nice fields with rank vegetation, good vegetation, sort of hay meadows growing through the summer, surrounded by, as you can see in the background there, sort of hedges and trees and scrub, which are all good for supporting small mammal populations, and also small bird populations. Owls do occasionally take small birds. Also on wetlands, they will take small amphibians as well, if they can. So, sorry, if I just go back to that slide. So our nature reserve do form some fantastic habitat for them, as particularly lots of our nature reserves are in the lowland. But also, it's not just our nature reserve, our work that we're doing beyond our nature reserve through our wider countryside work, in particular our projects that we know as the living landscape schemes, where we're working with a whole range of landowners to improve habitat for wildlife, across the board, everything from sort of the plants through to sort of predators like the barn owl. So you're working across the countryside really to try and improve things for all sorts of wildlife, including the barn owl. Just maybe just go on and talk a little bit more about their prey. And as you can see in this picture, there's something's being caught there. So, and again, if we just think about why they're so good at hunting, in particular at dusk, and which makes them so difficult to see. We've got this lovely sort of facial disc there, which you can really see very well to help them hear. These big eyes, which also can help them see. And this particular one, you can really see very well the talons with which it can grab the small voles, and like this poor fellow here. So this slide just shows you some of the things that they are known to eat. And obviously with such small mammals, their abundance is particularly affected by harsh winters, as I said earlier on, and so the availability of this prey is really important for the barn owls to help them survive. So we've got sort of things like small voles and wood mice on the top, the left-hand side here. Shrews, they'll also eat as well. As I said, they occasionally take birds, such as there's a reed bunting here. And sometimes they do take other things as well. So for example, this is a water vole, which is also a species that the Wildlife Trust is particularly interested in trying to protect and conserve. But the interaction between predators and prey is a really important part of a healthy ecosystem. So that's the sort of thing that we are aiming for, really. So this slide just gives you a sort of an indication of the range of diet that an owl can have, and rather conveniently, it's as the form of a pie chart. I'm sure owls don't generally eat pies. You can see in this particular one, so this is based on work done on several dozen barn owl pellets, and I'll talk a bit more about this in a moment. So the main prey is a short-tailed vole. There's some wood mice, some bank voles, and some shrew species as well. So quite varied. And this was one particular of our nature reserve, and it reflects the sort of range and proportion of prey that you see elsewhere on much bigger studies. So the interesting thing about this sort of work is basically what you have to do is you have to dissect a pellet. I mean, it's a great way of finding out about mammals. So it provides a very interesting link between sort of birds and mammals, in that although you're looking at a barn owl diet, it also helps you to understand how to identify mammal bones. So here you can see some members of the Bangor University Conservation Society having a go at identifying the bones within pellets. So you can see they've all got a tray, and within this tray they have a pellet or two, and they're carefully pulling them apart to reveal the bones. So what you end up with is something that looks like this. This person was obviously a very, very neat person. So this is all the sort of the fluff and the fur, and this is, you know, and these are the bones. This is the reason the owl has to regurgitate the pellet, and it will sometimes actually break up the pellet again and have another go. So you can see there's lots of jaw bones here, various other bones in different parts of the body here, some fantastic skulls, and so you can very rapidly learn how to identify them. And one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating when you get to do this is these bones at the top. So these teeth sort of look like they're sort of been sprayed with paint or touched with a felt tip, but this is actually the teeth of one of the shrews, and they are stained red like that. So that's a really good indicator of a shrew, and you could then identify it to species by looking at the pattern and the shape of your teeth. So if you sort of feel your own teeth, you can feel they've got lots of ridges and cusps on, and that varies between different species. So that enables you to identify the jaw bones you can see down here, down to species, and sometimes you can do it on some of the other bones that you might find. So it looks like, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 small mammals there out of what probably looks like 2 or 3 pellets there. So just to sort of really come back to this fantastic picture of a barn owl here. So this is how we all hope to see a barn owl out hunting at dusk. But just sort of nearly sort of finished really, and I was hoping that there'd be some questions and chat and we could sort of carry on talking. But just quickly, just to recap about the Wildlife Trust, who we are and how important our members are to us. So we've now got over 8,000 members. So thank you to everyone who is a member. We've also got a fantastic team of volunteers working with us, helping to manage habitats for barn owls on our nature reserves and elsewhere. As a charity, we have 13 trustees who help run the charity, and we now have over 50 staff involved, both managing our nature reserves, but also in community engagement projects, working with schools and other groups, and working with landowners. And those people are helping to manage our 35 nature reserves, covering about 650 hectares in total, and also helping to spread the word really about barn owls and managing habitats for wildlife. We have an environmental consultancy who works with us. So this slide just illustrates how you can help us support nature's recovery, and find out about the work that's going on, and also get involved. And in particular, if you want to help barn owls, you can volunteer on one of our nature reserves and get involved in some of our work, whether it's practical management or building nest boxes. So yeah, so it's perhaps a useful question for everyone, is how you can help barn owls in particular. So you can support our work, and I'll come on to that in a moment. You can help manage our nature reserves, but you can also maybe take on some of the ideas for about how you can help barn owls, and do that on your own land. Whether it's managing a small area you have to encourage small mammals, or whether it's maybe putting up a barn owl nest box. And we've got about to launch sort of 30 days wild, where you can promise to do something wild every single day during June, so from the 1st of June onwards, and we'll put a link to how you can get involved in that. But that would be a great way, if you've not got involved with the Wildlife Trust, to maybe start your sort of engagement work and your experiences with barn owls and other wildlife as well. So I just thought now we would perhaps go back to the live stream. So if I stop sharing my screen, we go back to Jake, and we have a look at what's going on. So over to you again, Jake. Oh, there you go. Something about. seems quite alert. There seems to be a little bit of movement sort of down here, sort of just down on her left, which could be one of the chicks. We think there are sort of 2 or 3 chicks at the moment, which are growing very rapidly. Give it a few more seconds, see what's going on. I'm always interested to see what else is crawling around the walls as well. There's all sorts of beetles and flies and moths crawling around here. And there's something going up the wall there. She does look awake, that's one thing, so maybe something's going on. Be very patient. You see the amazing bill as well, helping them tear into their prey. No, perhaps we're not going to be lucky, but yeah, so the video is there. If anybody wants to carry on watching later on, you can do so via our website. So Jake, perhaps you could stop sharing and then I'll go carry on sharing. Okay. And just to finish, I think, you know, so this slide is rather lovely. It just captures an owl hunting at dusk in a lovely sunset, and just a few words to ask us to think like an owl and think about how we can connect with the natural world. So these few lines from a poem are taken from The Lost Spells by Robert Macfarlane, who also wrote The Lost Words, which was in reaction to the removal of a number of wild words from the English dictionary or the Oxford English Dictionary. But yeah, so I just think that's really nice, just taking the time to watch and listen when you're out in the evening. So that's the end of the presentation. So perhaps we've still got plenty of time for some questions and things. So so Jake, have there been any questions so far?